So I was going to have a green screen back here and have more of a fun background, but as I was getting set up I realized I was wearing a green shirt and I didn't feel like changing, so here we are. So it's a universal truth that if a book gets popular on TikTok, it's going to be exactly like every other book that gets popular on TikTok. It's going to be fantasy, but the fantasy elements are all going to be very poorly done and not actually explored. Because it's not actually going to be fantasy, it's going to be romance, all about a teenager or a young woman meeting a man who is some sort of monarch or aristocrat. There's a lot of northern dukes in this for some reason. He's going to be harsh and sometimes just straight up sociopathic, but he loves her so much and he's so hot that we're all just fine with it. It's going to be young adult, or it's going to be adult, but it's written exactly like a young adult book with the addition of some sex scenes. It's going to be far longer than it needs to be. There will be a ton of repetitive scenes and needlessly long exposition that adds nothing to anything because all the magic and world building revolves around how the main characters are in love. It's going to have a protagonist who, on paper, is an action heroine, and she does tons of cool stuff and she can take care of herself, but in reality she'll be dependent on men to do anything at all, really, but especially dependent on men to protect herself and fight the bad guys. And Quicksilver fits all those criteria to a T. It is just not good. There are a couple of parts in it that I did like, admittedly, but it's not good. It's not worth reading. And I could leave it at that, but obviously all of you are here for details. You're here for me to make fun of this crap so you can stay in the know about pop culture without wasting your time actually consuming that pop culture. You know, fewer and fewer people want to actually read anything, or watch movies, or play video games, or watch TV shows anymore. Like, that requires a modicum of effort to actually do. You know, it's much easier to just listen to someone else give a summary of the pop culture thing while you play video games or browse Twitter in another tab, and then you can formulate your opinion based on that and participate in the culture wars. So, let's go. Spoilers ahead.
This is the introduction song. It's not very good, but it's not too long.
So first things first about Quicksilver, the cover looks like a pop emo album. It's not the worst thing I've ever seen, I guess. It's a fantasy story about hot warrior dudes, so having a hot warrior dude on the cover, like, I guess that fits. It just looks a bit odd for reasons I can't quite articulate. So then you actually open the book, and what's it about? Well, it's about the main character girl. Her name in this book is Ceres, but she's exactly like every other main character girl in every other book that gets popular on TikTok. Ceres is also the name of the bad guy from Galaxy Quest, so throughout the whole book I kept picturing her looking like this.
Hello, Ceres. How you doing?
Better than my lieutenant.
Ceres lives in a place called the Silver City. It is a fantasy city, and she lives in the super poor part of it because she's a street urchin. Or at least, she used to be a street urchin. She's in her 20s now. The Silver City is also ruled by an evil, immortal queen. That way Ceres can be oppressed and really hate the government. The story begins with Ceres stealing a gauntlet from a guard, because their armor is made of gold for some reason, and so the gauntlet is really, really valuable, and she manages to run off with it. But soon after, she does get caught. Wow, this sounds familiar, maybe because I've read a book that's come out in the past 15 frickin' years. Look, normally it makes sense for the inciting incident to be main character steals something and gets caught, and then the whole story happens after that. Normally that makes sense because the main character is actually poor and desperate. Recently I read To Gaze Upon Wicked Gods, and while that book isn't very good, it has the exact same inciting incident. Main character girl steals something valuable and gets caught with it, but in that book, main character girl was actually poor and actually desperate, so it makes sense that she would do so. Ceres is gainfully employed. She's a blacksmith and a glassblower, because, you know, those are basically the same thing. It's not like those are both extremely complex skills that took over a decade of apprenticeship for people to learn in real life or anything. So if you're wondering, why does Ceres steal the gauntlet? Well, she has a younger sibling she needs to take care of. Take a shot, I guess. Christ on a bike, you people are not even trying. And this cliche is even worse than usual because her younger brother isn't like a kid who's sick or disabled or anything. He's 21 years old and he's a gambling addict. So he has money problems, and Ceres wants to help him with that. And look, I have siblings and I have addicts in my family. I've had them in my family basically my entire life. After a certain point, You just cut them off and let them deal with their own shit. Like, they fuck up their own lives. After a while, that's their problem. You can't let them drag you down with them. I don't know who exactly, but I do know someone in my audience probably needs to hear that. Cut them off, okay? That you've done all you can to help them. They're on their own now. Don't let them drag you down too. Honestly, I'd be fine with this if Ceres was just the responsible older sibling who had a decent job, and her brother was the thief or gambling addict who stole a gauntlet and then just got her in trouble. You know, it'd be a little bit different, but it would still get her in trouble. There'd still be the inciting incident. The point is, Ceres has a level of naivete and just outright stupidity that would be fine if she was 16, but again, she's like 23 or 24 in this book. She's a full-ass adult. Like, this is the ultimate form of TikTok romantasy slop. It just throws in every single conceivable trope that other TikTok romantasy slop has without stopping to think if it actually makes sense to combine all this. I do not like this book, and on top of that, I do not respect the person who wrote it, because she didn't actually write it. She didn't actually write anything. She just threw some vague ideas that she saw elsewhere together. Roses are red, violets are blue. I hate this book, and fuck you too. Anyways, Ceres gets caught and captured by the evil queen, and she's nearly killed, but she unleashes her secret powers that she never knew she had before. Take a shot. She's an alchemist, which means she can control Quicksilver. Now, in real life, Quicksilver is just an old-timey name for mercury, which is, you know, the stuff they put in thermometers. It's like a metal that you shouldn't touch with your bare hands or ingest. In the book, though, Quicksilver is a magical metal that can shift between liquid and solid and has voices that only Ceres can hear. It also does other stuff, and by that I mean it does whatever the story needs it to at that time. At this time, the Quicksilver opens up a portal to the Fey realm, and a horny shadow fairy comes through to rescue Ceres. Yeah, this story is about horny shadow fairies. Of fucking course it is. There's no other magical races from folklore that you can draw inspiration from. There's no original fantasy races that you could make. Just bring in fairies and make them exactly the same as everyone else that writes TikTok romantasy slop makes them. They live thousands of years. They're better than humans in every way. They're horny, and they have shadow powers of some sort because, I don't know, Shadow and Bone made it look cool. Maybe they have necromancy, if you feel a single spark of creativity in your skull. You could change nothing, call them elves instead, and it would at least feel like you were trying. You wouldn't even have to actually try. It would just feel a little bit like you were trying if you gave them a different name, but no one wants to even do that. Anyways, this particular book's horny shadow fairy is called Kingfisher, and he rescues Ceres and takes her to the Fey realm. Now, Fae are having their own problems, and he wants her to help using her alchemist powers as payback because, you know, he did just save her life. Basically, there's an army of vampires that the Fae are fighting, and the vampires act more like zombies than vampires, but whatever. And they're at war with them, and Kingfisher wants Ceres to make magical relics that he can arm his troops with, and she spends a huge part of the book working on that. That's actually one positive point I want to put in this book's favor, is that Ceres has to practice and train a lot to control her powers. You know, she doesn't know what her powers are or how they work, and neither does anyone else, because alchemists have been extinct for a long time. So she has to practice and experiment with her own powers, she has to read through old books to try and do research and figure out what she can do. It takes a lot of time and effort on her part, and I actually like that. And even by the end, she's not a master. Alchemist power is all about, you know, metal, it's about Quicksilver. So Ceres can make Quicksilver solid or liquid by focusing on it. She knows what type of metal something is just by touching it. And like I said before, Quicksilver does whatever other nonsense the plot demands. Ceres also spends a lot of time learning about the Fey realm, but there's not much interesting to say there. You know, it is a place where Fey live. That is it. The government, the society, the culture of this place, it all feels exactly the same as every other human society in every other generic fantasy novel that I've ever read. And I've read a lot of fantasy novels. Because Fae are supposed to be, you know, non-human, but the way they're written in this book, they're just beautiful people. There's no focus about how their long lives give them different perspectives on things. There's nothing about how death is viewed differently by them because it happens so rarely. There's nothing about how being separate from the human world has changed their view of humanity. They're just people, but they're beautiful and sometimes they have cool powers. Like, I don't know, I feel like if you're gonna bring up Fae, if you're going to have them be a major part of your story, either lean into them being a different race and make them weird and make them different, or just make them humans. Because I feel like you literally could just make Kingfisher and all the others humans without changing anything major, and the story would be exactly the same. Because by making them Fae and then writing the Fae as if they're humans, all we're left with is a bunch of exposition about Fae that makes them less interesting than they would otherwise be. Around the halfway point of Quicksilver, I started wondering why the book bothers making two different fantasy worlds. Because again, we got the Silver City, and then we got the Fae realm. But this is an isekai story. It's about someone going to a different realm via magical means. Why not just make Ceres someone from Earth, you know? Lean into the wish fulfillment. That's what this is. The Silver City is kinda cool, but 90% of the book takes place elsewhere, so it doesn't matter. And again, the cool aspects of the Silver City are never really explored. Fantasy is about exploring new worlds, but Quicksilver and other stuff like it is about projecting onto an annoying young woman who has a lot of sex. Speaking of which, you would be forgiven for assuming that there is enemies to lovers in this. Like, you would be forgiven for assuming that Kingfisher and Ceres, I straight up forgot her name for a second there. You would be forgiven for thinking that Kingfisher and Ceres are gonna hate each other and be opposed to each other in some way at the beginning, but then they slowly fall in love. But that's not what happens. Fans who describe it that way are just straight up lying to you. Kingfisher is kind of a dick, and he's also hot, and they're on the same side the entire book. They're never enemies at any point, and then later they bone. That's it. I seriously have nothing to say about their relationship. Like, he does technically have a magical bond on her that he puts on early on, and he can force her to do things magically, but he never abuses it, so I guess it could be worse. And Ceres likes him because the book, I don't know, the author wrote that she likes him. That's why Ceres likes him. Years ago, this same author, Callie Hart, wrote a thinly veiled Star Wars fanfiction called Black Moon Rising, and that wasn't a super popular book, but Jenny Nicholson did do a video on it, and at one point she says something kinda interesting.
I have to say, every time something sexually explicit happens, or the characters even cuss, I feel newly surprised, because otherwise this book puts out such strong YA novel energy.
And admittedly, I haven't read Black Moon Rising, so I can't comment on that, but I will say the exact same thing happens with Quicksilver, and years ago, that was strange. That was a novelty back when Black Moon Rising came out. Nowadays, that's just every popular fantasy book. Quicksilver is bad, but it's bad in the exact same way as all other book talk romantasy slop. So anyways, Ceres is worried and doesn't want to leave her brother back in the Silver City, so Fisher goes to retrieve him, but while he's looking for her brother, he accidentally kidnaps someone else, and he happens to bring back Ceres' ex-boyfriend. His name is Carrion, which is an odd name, but okay. Carrion stays in the Fae realm because reasons, and for most of the book, like, he becomes relevant in the climax, but for most of the book, he's just there to be mildly annoying, and I guess also make Fisher jealous sometimes. Like, at one point, Fisher tells Ceres not to share food with Carrion, her ex-boyfriend, who's the only person she knows from her old life, and he tells her not to share food with him because I said so. And at this point, they're not dating. Like her and Fisher are not dating at this point. He's basically just her boss, and she thinks he's kind of hot, but he is telling her what to do with other men. Okay. How dare my girlfriend have a relationship from before her and I even met? Brah! Like, dude, you're over 1,000 years old. Dating when you're that age means that your prospective partners will probably have had other relationships. Even if you're going after really, really young women, that's going to be the case. Look, I'll be honest, there's not much plot to discuss here for the majority of the book. Like, Ceres hangs out in Fisher's castle, there's some exposition. Like I've said before, romantasy is for people who hate fantasy and who also think they're too good for romance or erotica. And Quicksilver really does solidify my point there, because it's just romance, but it has a lot of exposition thrown in there. It doesn't have any of the other stuff that fantasy is known for, which are actually more fun, and if they're there, they're extremely surface level. It's just exposition. Like, it feels like this was written by someone who is unfamiliar with fantasy as a genre, like they don't know what it is or why people like it. The actual plot of this book does come in around the 2/3 mark, so here's a bunch of details that you should know before that. Fae have sharp teeth, but they didn't always have sharp teeth. There was some magical bullshit that changed them a long time ago, and Ceres says at one point that sharp teeth are just part of their genetics now, which raises a lot of questions. Most notably, Saris, how the fuck do you know what genetics are? Like, do the people here have an understanding of DNA? Do they know about cell theory and germ theory? Do they have microscopes? Those are never mentioned at any point. Did they learn about germs and DNA with their microscopes? What if they have those, what other modern scientific discoveries do they have? Why is all their technology seemingly at a medieval level if they know this shit? I know that The Witcher did something kind of similar, but in The Witcher, the anachronism seems to be deliberate. I don't know for certain. I haven't read the books or played the games. I've only seen the first couple seasons of the show, and I didn't think that was very good. But the point is, at least in the show, they talk about mutations and stuff, and that was anachronistic, but it was deliberate. There's also a scene where a character mentions cliff notes, which are a thing in the real world, and again, that's just something that Jenny Nicholson brought up in her Black Moon Rising video, because that's like a thing from the real world. It's odd that it would happen in two separate books written by the same person years apart. It's almost like the author isn't bothering to learn or improve her craft in any way. Fae have a really good sense of smell, so they can all smell when Saris is horny. That's a thing. That's a thing. And we learn that Kingfisher ran away from a battle and made his friends lose years ago. And when he's confronted about it, he refuses to say why he did it, because we need mystery and intrigue. Please note the air quotes around both of those words. Now, don't worry though. Kingfisher didn't actually do anything wrong. When we learn what happened, we learn that he's still a perfect angel. You know, we don't want to add any moral complexity to our morally gray anti-hero, after all. Someone tries to kill Fisher, and Saris uses her alchemist powers to destroy their sword while they're swinging it at him and saves his life. And look, I just gotta say, this book would be tolerable if it was shorter. You know, if it was just a quick 300 to 350 page romance instead of a 650 frickin' page doorstop, I think it would be fine. I don't think it would win any awards, but I think it would be fine. The fact that I have to wade through all this shit is what made it so obnoxious. So now the story gets going for a little bit. There's a horde of 50,000 vampires. It appears, and it's led by a man named Malcolm. Yeah, that's the name of the antagonist of this book. It's not a great name for a Dark Lord, if I'm being honest. You know, when I hear the name Malcolm, I imagine a guy in flannel who's really into woodworking. Now, technically, Malcolm's father is in charge, but we mostly see and focus on Malcolm, so it's kind of like a Sauron and Saruman thing. Anyways, the point is, Malcolm shows up and has this army, and he and Fisher have a history, and there's a big battle, and they defeat the vampire horde for now. And around this time, Saris and Fisher also start having sex, and at one point he's referring to her pussy, and he says that it's a splendid flower blooming just for me. And I needed to let all of you know that. There are worse lines in this book, but I don't think I can say them on YouTube. After they have sex, he gives her a magic tattoo on her chest without her consent while she's sleeping, which is not nice of him. But that's actually not what happens. We think at first that he gave her the tattoo while she was sleeping, and Fisher acts like he gave it to her, but later we learn that they formed a mating bond and the tattoo just sort of appeared on its own. So why didn't he tell her this? Why didn't he tell her, oh, I didn't do that, that just appeared? I don't know. Also, what is a mating bond? I don't know. It's a thing that exists in every other fae porn fantasy book, so this one just throws it in there and doesn't bother explaining it. Beyond the fact that nobody else has one, so Fisher and Saris are just, like, super special. We learn at this point that Saris can't have children. She was cleansed when she was 14, and from what we gather, most girls in her ward of the Silver City are sterilized. Sure. I don't know if that actually makes sense, but sure. And I know it feels like I'm just throwing out a bunch of random bullshit, but that's how the book is structured. It's just random bullshit that means nothing and goes nowhere. Here's a bunch more random facts. Fae can drink blood because they're also vampires, I guess? I don't know. They try to make the war effort, like the war they're fighting with Malcolm and the vampires, seem super desperate, and they specifically say, without Saris's help, we'll lose within a year because she's the special cool main character, and it doesn't work at all. You know, like, I hate to use cliches, but show, don't tell. Like, they're outnumbered, but all we ever see are Fae warriors wiping the floor with dozens of vampires each, so the villains just don't feel like a threat. So the idea that they're on the verge of losing, it does not work. Here's a random complaint. The dialogue is way too modern. It's kind of like the issue I had with Wind and Truth a couple of months ago, but not quite the same. Like, they use a lot of modern swear words, like bullshit and motherfucker, and just other words that don't seem like they fit into the setting. You know, it might be fine if it was a stylistic choice, but I don't think it was. I think there was just no thought put into this. So now it's backstory time. Ceres's mother was a prostitute, and the neighborhood really hated her. I don't know why. Like, again, this is an impoverished slum where everyone is barely scraping by, and apparently there's only one prostitute in the neighborhood. Like, no one else is doing that as a way to try and make ends meet.
That don't make no sense.
That's very strange to me. And the whole neighborhood hates her for, again, some reason. I don't know why. I feel like it's trying to make some social commentary, but it's really clumsy and surface level, so it fails. And anyways, Ceres's mom, the prostitute, was murdered and her body was abused by the neighborhood because the author wants us to believe that Ceres loves the Silver City and doesn't want it to be destroyed, but also all the people who live in the Silver City seem awful, so I'm not sure why Ceres loves it so much. Fisher has Quicksilver inside his body. He bound it to himself centuries ago to save his life and make him stronger, but it's also slowly killing him. I think. It is not explained very well. We learn that the Fae cannot attack vampires unless the vampires enter their territory. So they can't, like, go into the vampire kingdom and do raids or sorties or anything like that that might help them win a war. And this is just the laws of war. They're not allowed to attack unless the vampires come into their territory. Sure. At one point, a sword breaks, and then Ceres uses her blacksmithing skills and her alchemist powers to reforge it, and a Fae tries to take the sword, even though the sword is magic and sentient and doesn't want her to take it, and then her hand gets blown off, and Ceres thinks for a moment she doesn't deserve to get her hand magically regrown, because she was mean to me one time. Don't you know that if you're mean to the main character, you deserve every bad thing that can possibly happen to you? Okay, that's it for all the random bullshit. Now it's back to the actual plot. So Malcolm kidnaps Fisher's sister and then bites her, and that turns her into a vampire. Normally when vampires bite people, they either just die or they turn into mindless hordes, but Malcolm is like a really high-up special vampire, so when he does it, they actually keep their minds. They're under his control, he can force them to do whatever, but they still remember who they are and they can talk and stuff. So he bites Fisher's sister, but the change isn't complete yet. So Malcolm, or rather his father, because remember, he's the one that's really in charge, he wants to lure Fisher out so that he can kill him. So he says, hey, if you don't exchange yourself for your sister, she's going to be a sex slave forever. So Fisher and Ceres and the others decide, okay, we have to rescue her. And this is where the climax begins and the story picks up quite a bit. Fisher releases Ceres from her magical oath, but she stays to help anyways because she loves him. She also has nowhere else to go, but, you know, we'll just ignore that. So Ceres, Fisher, and some friends sneak into the vampire kingdom for their rescue mission. There's some action, there are a few set-piece moments, and they work all right. You know, I was getting into it. The characters are annoying and the world building is really, really thin, but I was getting into the climax. They come face to face with Malcolm and his father. The evil queen from Ceres's home city is also there, and they give Fisher's tragic backstory. You see, he tried to save some people, and in the process he made a blood pact with the villains, and then he was betrayed, and then a whole city was destroyed. And it's more complex than that, but that is the gist of it. Yeah, like I said, Fisher did nothing wrong. He was being cagey about what happened solely to make him seem morally gray without him actually, you know, being morally gray. Like, if you're going to make your characters good people, just write them as good people. You know, stop lying to your audience. So there's some more fighting. During all the fighting, Malcolm drinks Carrion's blood and he gets hurt by it. Yeah, remember Carrion, Ceres' ex-boyfriend? Like, he's important now. He gets hurt by drinking Carrion's blood because Carrion is from some important bloodline. Yeah, he's actually the heir to the Fae throne. He was hiding out in the human world and he used magic to mask his appearance. And it makes sense that he would never say who he was when he was over there because he was in hiding. But then when he came back to the Fae realm, he also still never said who he was until now. And he didn't do that because during the fighting, Ceres is the one that kills Malcolm. She cuts off his head. That becomes relevant in a little bit. And after the battle, Ceres passes out and she has a vision where she meets a god and he tells her that she's special. You know the drill. He just lists off some magical mumbo-jumbo and says, hey Ceres, you're the most important person in the world. You're going to have to do some crazy stuff to save the universe. And then she wakes up, and when she wakes up, she is no longer a human. She is half Fae and half vampire. And I can guarantee you in the sequels, which there are going to be sequels to this, I can guarantee you she will have the strengths of both and the weaknesses of neither. Not that Fae have actual weaknesses in books like this, but you get the point. And also, because she's the one that killed Malcolm, she's the queen of the vampires now. Sure. The book ends with Ceres taking some time to think about how she's super special and the only one that can save the world due to the magical mumbo-jumbo that the god from earlier told her. Basically, there's some stuff about how he needs to plant a new tree that will create new worlds because the old worlds are all dying. I couldn't care. I don't care. I really don't. Every single thing in this book, from the world to the magic to the backstories of every character, is only there to try and make Ceres look cool. She's descended from Fae many generations back, but she has alchemist powers that even full-blooded Fae don't have anymore. She has very little combat training or experience, but she can fight alongside millennia-old warriors because that's what the story demands. It might be justifiable if she was fighting using her alchemy powers some more, but she doesn't really do that. She's a lowly, squishy human at the start, but then she's a half-fae, half-vampire, and a queen by the end because all the rules of the universe bend to her will. Like, okay, in most forms of fiction, being a human is just something you have to be born as, and being a fae is also something you have to be born as, but I could accept her being turned into a vampire because a vampire is something that you're not born as, it's something you get turned into. But the fact that she's half vampire and half fae out of nowhere is just obnoxious. Like, it's going so far out of its way to make her look special and cool. Now, media aimed at men also has perfect protagonists who can do no wrong. A good example of that would be Jack Reacher, from the Jack Reacher books, the Jack Reacher movies, and more recently the Amazon show just called Reacher, which, this isn't sponsored, but I really love that show. Reacher is a genius, and he's a badass fighter, and all the women want to have sex with him, but the world doesn't revolve around Jack Reacher. You know, he's just a guy who's good at everything. Imagine if he was good at everything, and also he was the subject of multiple prophecies, and the secret heir to a kingdom, and he had superpowers that had only ever been heard about in legends. Because stuff like Quicksilver does that. Stuff like Quicksilver builds an entire universe from the ground up solely to make the protagonist the linchpin of all creation. The whole world is only there for one person's benefit. Even chosen one protagonists in fantasy, like Rand al'Thor from Wheel of Time, don't usually go that far with that sort of thing. And that's why romantasy almost always fails. It is written for one person, and the person it's written for doesn't even exist. Like, it's like writing itself for the protagonist. It's so bizarre and backwards when you think about it. I hate Quicksilver. Goodbye. Hi, how's it going? The video's not over yet. You see all these names here? These are my patrons. My $10 and up patrons are Arthur D. Gonzalez Martin, Brother Santodes, Carolina Clay, Chibs Ahoy, Jace Spades, Lexi Delorme, Lord Tiebreaker, Michael and Katie Hake, Mr. AR013, Proscriptions of Dwojang, Rovi, Sykes XS, Slumbering Jellyfish, Observing Outer Space, Tesla Shark, Toa Michael, Vevictus, and Wesley. Thanks to all of them. Thanks to all these other people. Those are my $5 and up patrons. And, you know, thanks to everyone who just watches the video this far. You're all great. If you want to get your name put on here, as well as get access to early videos and exclusive videos and things of that nature, then consider donating to my Patreon or becoming a YouTube channel member. And if that's not something you feel like doing, then just dropping a like on the video, commenting on it, subscribing to my channel, making sure to watch everything I put out, that's all great too. Or just, you know, check out my merchandise store. Please, I need to eat. Anyways, that's all. Goodbye.